in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has received in Algiers the Italian Minister of the Interior, Matteo Piantedosi, who is on an unofficial visit to Algeria. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the national community abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has arrived in Tunis, Tunisia, as special representative of or envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, where he was received by the Tunisian President Kais Saied to hand him over a message from the President of the Republic. The United States has announced that it is imposing sanctions against several Zionist settlers for violence committed against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, where settler crimes have increased at a time when the Gaza Strip continues to suffer a barbaric Zionist aggression. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First in our news, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has received in Algiers the visiting Italian Minister of the Interior, Matteo Piantedosi, according to a press release issued by the Presidency of the Republic. In a statement to the press following his meeting with the President of the Republic, the Italian minister hailed the level of the friendly relations which link Algeria to his country, based on a common vision. More details in this report by our colleague Saad Bouazi.
The Italian minister indicated that the meeting was an opportunity for him to listen to the views and analyses of the President of the Republic on issues of common interest, welcoming the level of Algerian-Italian friendship relations which extend over decades and are based on a common vision. He indicated in this respect that it was agreed to further strengthen this friendship in the future. Matteo Piantedosi also expressed his thanks to the President of the Republic for the warm welcome given to him, underlining that the meeting had allowed him to inform him of the work accomplished with his counterpart, the Minister of the Interior, Local Assemblies and Country Planning, Brahim Merred, which resulted in the signing of an agreement between the two countries in the security field. The meeting took place in the presence of the Director of Cabinet at the Presidency of the Republic, Boualam Boualam, the Minister of the Interior, Local Assemblies and Country Planning, Brahim Merred, and the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Lounes Magraman. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, also received the visiting Italian Minister of the Interior, Matteo Piantedosi, who was accompanied by the Italian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of international cooperation, Edmondo Cirielli.
And the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, arrived yesterday in Tunis, Tunisia, as special envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, where he was received by Tunisian President Kais Saied and handed him over a message from the President of the Republic, according to a press release from the ministry. Ahmed Attaf will also hold a working session as part of his visit with his Tunisian counterpart Nabil Ammar. This visit is part of the realization of the desire of the leaders of the two brotherly countries to promote the significant momentum experienced by Algeria and Tunisian relations and to provide all the means of support to achieve their ambitious vision aimed at giving an exemplary character to these strategic relations serving the interests of the two brotherly peoples as well as the objectives of security, stability and prosperity in the region, concludes the press release. The Ministry of Energy and Mines has announced in a press release that Algeria is ready to continue the reduction in its oil production capacity beyond March 31st in consultation with OPEC Plus countries in order to cope with the developments in the international market. Algeria had voluntarily made an additional reduction in its production by 51,000 barrels per day from January 1st, 2024 for an initial period of 3 months in accordance with the commitment made on November 30th, 2023. The implementation of this decision demonstrates Algeria's continued commitment to the stability and balance of the global oil market, underlines the ministry. And the Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goujil, has received at the Council headquarters the member of the Political Bureau of the Palestinian Resistance Movement, Hamas, Bassem Naim, and the representative of the movement in Algeria, Youssef Hamdan, said a press release from the Council. The meeting constituted a new opportunity to examine the latest developments in the dramatic security and humanitarian situation prevailing in Gaza and in the occupied Palestinian territories as a whole, prey to recorded Zionist criminality, which tends to exterminate the resistant Palestinian people and to deport them. Salah Goujil reaffirmed during this meeting his condemnation of the barbaric crimes committed by the Zionist entity against the Palestinians in full view of the inert international organizations and in an immobile international community which is backed by abject alliances to the detriment of human values, universal principles, and international characters, or charters, as the press release. Still with the Palestinian people, Palestinians detained by the Zionist occupation army in the Gaza Strip have revealed that they have been subjected to violence and abuses for several days before being released. The victims, who are currently being treated in a hospital in Rafah in the south of the Gaza Strip, said they had been arrested without charge, detained for days, others for weeks, before being released in groups. Saad Bougazi has more details in this particular aspect.
At Al-Najjar Hospital in Rafah, Khalid Al-Nabris, a resident in Khan Yunis, the large town in the south of the Gaza Strip, said that the Palestinians had been tortured relentlessly. Zionist soldiers have arrested hundreds, if not thousands, of residents since the start of their aggression against Gaza on 7th October. During the first 72 hours, drinking, eating, or going to the toilets was forbidden. We were handcuffed and blindfolded for 7 days, said the 48-year-old man wearing a neck brace. It was really difficult, and we were subjected to torture that we had never experienced before, including the use of dogs to frighten detainees, he added. According to the Palestinian authorities, 114 people, including 4 women, were brought back on Thursday to the Karam Abu Salam crossing point near Rafah. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, Mohammed Iran, head of surgery at the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza, who had been arrested during the incursion into the hospital 2 months ago, was also released. The United Nations representative for human rights in the Palestinian territories, Ajit Sungai, denounced last month the horrific conditions faced by the detained Gazans. According to him, thousands of them have been arrested since 7th October and detained in unknown locations.
And the NGO Human Rights Watch has called for the resumption of funding granted to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, noting that this funding is important for the mitigation of the humanitarian catastrophe and the threat of famine besetting the Gaza Strip. Jamal Salmani has more.
Human Rights Watch Crisis Advocacy Director Akshaya Kumar said in a post on the X platform that the blocking of funds to the United Nations Agency, the only organization that provides food, water, and necessary medicines to more than 2.3 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, illustrates the total indifference to the warnings of the world's leading experts regarding the imminent threat of famine. She added that the lives of children, people with disabilities, and pregnant women depend heavily on UNRWA services, noting that the suspension of funding for UNRWA also has, among other objectives, the support of the Israeli occupier in its genocidal aggression against Palestine. The NGO Human Rights Watch called, in this respect, on Western countries, notably the United States, Great Britain, Canada, and Germany, to suspend military aid and arms sales to the Zionist entity, whose forces commit serious and widespread violations against Palestinians that amount to war crimes. As a reminder, several states and organizations have called on states that have decided to suspend their funding to UNRWA to abandon this decision, describing it as hasty and ill-considered.
The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has announced that it risks having to cease its activities by the end of February after 13 countries, including major donors, announced that they were suspending their funding. The head of UNRWA, Filippi Lazzarini, said in a press release that if funding remains suspended, they will most likely have to cease their operations by the end of February, not only in the Gaza Strip but the whole region. A senior official of the World Health Organization (WHO) said yesterday that the population of Gaza was dying of hunger at a time when major donor countries announced the suspension of their aid to UNRWA. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned Wednesday that UNRWA remained the backbone of humanitarian aid in Gaza. The United States has announced that it is imposing sanctions against several Zionist settlers for violence committed against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, where settler crimes have increased at a time when the Gaza Strip continues to suffer a barbaric Zionist aggression, according to U.S. officials. These sanctions are part of an executive order issued by President Joe Biden on Thursday aimed at punishing people accused of attacks or terrorist acts or who undermine peace, stability, and security in the region, he said. The new U.S. sanctions will initially target 4 people who will be banned from entering the United States and their assets frozen, these officials were quoted by the media as saying. And the Palestinian Foreign Ministry has denounced the failure of the international community to establish a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip after nearly 4 months of Zionist aggression, affirming that this situation is unjustifiable. In a statement carried by the Wafa news agency, the Palestinian diplomacy indicated that it is completely unfair that the international community is witnessing for almost 4 months now serial massacres and crimes against the Palestinian people without acting to establish a ceasefire in Gaza, the only option capable of stopping the bloodshed for the Palestinians. The immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is the only way to protect civilians, cover their basic humanitarian needs, as well as implement the decision of the International Court of Justice, ICJ, and Security Council Resolutions 2720, the ministry said. He denounced, in the same connection, the silence and passivity of certain states towards the Zionist entity, which has exceeded all limits in its violation of international law. A Palestinian Red Crescent Society rescue team sent to rescue a little girl remains missing in northern Gaza, subject to a genocidal aggression by the Zionist occupation army, the organization said Thursday. The organization said it has still not heard from the ambulance team 66 hours after they were sent to rescue a 6-year-old girl in northern Gaza. The little girl was trapped in a car with the bodies of her family members, one of whom was killed, while on the phone pleading for help from the Red Crescent. And 5 United Nations rapporteurs have denounced attacks on the media in Gaza, criticizing the Zionist entity's deliberate strategy aimed at silencing journalists. Targeted attacks and assassinations of journalists constitute war crimes, these experts said in a statement. Attacks on media in Gaza and restrictions on other journalists accessing Gaza, combined with severe internet disruptions, constitute major obstacles to the right to information, they also noted. According to information available to the UN, more than 122 journalists and media professionals have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the start of the Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip on October 7. Now in New York, the UN Secretary General spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said in a press briefing that the scale of explosive contamination in Gaza requires urgent action. Let's listen to him.
Due to constant hostilities, the scale of explosive contamination in Gaza requires urgent action. The UN Mine Action Service continues to provide explosive ordnance disposal support to ensure the safe passage of convoys. Last week, the UN Mine Action Service supported 3 convoys to the north, including 2 food convoys and 1 fuel delivery to Shifa Hospital. In addition, 2 explosive threat assessments were conducted in Khan Yunis, including one at the Khan Yunis Training Center, which, as you will recall, was hit last week.
And the savage Zionist aggression against the defenseless Palestinian people of the besieged Gaza Strip is going on unabated in its 119th day, with dozens of innocent civilians killed and scores of others injured, in addition to the widespread disruption of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, schools, and UN buildings. In a preliminary toll, the Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip since October 7 has resulted in the murder of over 27,000 people, the majority of whom are women and children, and over 66,000 injuries. The Belgian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hadja Lahbib, has announced that she has summoned the Zionist entity's ambassador to Belgium following the strikes that destroyed the offices of the Belgian Development Agency in the Gaza Strip. The offices of Enabel, the Belgian Development Agency in Gaza, were bombed and destroyed. Targeting civilian buildings is unacceptable. We are summoning the ambassador of the Zionist entity to get to the bottom of this, declared the Belgian minister on X platform, saying to act together with the Development Minister Caroline Kenaz. In the meantime, the Belgian Deputy Prime Minister Petra de Sutter has said that Belgium will continue to provide financial aid to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA. And finally, the United Nations Security Council's continuing failure to agree on a ceasefire in Gaza is troubling many members, including Guyana, which assumes the rotating presidency of the Council this month. Guyana's permanent representative to the UN told a press briefing that her country would continue to lead the conversation to get more humanitarian support to the people, or for the people, of Gaza. Let's listen to her.
Guyana has called for a ceasefire, and Guyana will continue to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. We believe that we should not wait another day for that. And this is why I said we will be constructive in the resolution, and hopefully we would be able to have a resolution. As a small state, we bring to the Council what we have always practiced and held true to, and that is our principles. And also in terms of Palestine, Guyana is actually a founding member of the Committee on the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, and we have continuously advocated for the two-state solution. And we believe that this is the ultimate solution in the crisis that we face right now. While what we see is unprecedented, we also believe that there's opportunity in this to move forward that process.
That's the end of the news bulletin. I leave you now with our weekly programs and meet you again tomorrow for finishing our news bulletin. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Inspiring Figures. We invite you to join our special programs on prominent figures who marked the Islamic Golden Age, a period of cultural, economic, and scientific flourishing in the history of Islam, traditionally dated from the 8th to the 14th century. Today we'll shed light on a prominent historian who is regarded to be one of the brightest and most brilliant minds of the Muslim world. He contributed to many fields. Many scientists today believe that social sciences as we know it today might have never reached such high level without the help of Ibn Khaldun. He is regarded to be among the founding fathers of modern sociology, the philosophy of history, and economics. Ibn Khaldun's best work is the widely known book, the Muqaddimah, meaning the introduction, which he wrote in 1377. It was an introduction and first book to his planned work of universal history, but already in his lifetime it was viewed as an independent work on its own. Some modern thinkers think of it as the first work dealing with the philosophy of history, social sciences of sociology, demography, cultural history, and many more sciences. Ibn Khaldun starts the Muqaddimah with thorough criticism on the mistakes regularly committed by his fellow historians and the difficulties which await the historian in his work. He sums up 7 critical issues and then lays out his theory of human society in the Muqaddimah. Ibn Khaldun often criticized the uncritical acceptance of historical data. As a result, he introduced the scientific method to the social sciences, which was considered something new to his age. He often referred to it as his new science and developed his own new terminology for it. His historical method also laid the groundwork for the observation of the role of state, communication, propaganda, and systematic bias in history, leading to his development of historiography. The concept of asabiya, meaning tribalism, clanism, or in a modern context, nationalism, is one of the best known aspects of the Muqaddimah. Ibn Khaldun uses the term asabiya to describe the bond of cohesion among humans in a group forming community. The bond asabiya exists at any level of civilization, from nomadic society to states and empires. Asabiya is most strong in the nomadic phase and decreases as civilization advances. And as this asabiya declines, another more compelling asabiya may take its place. Thus, civilizations rise and fall, and history describes these cycles of asabiya as they play out. Ibn Khaldun wrote his famous book Al-Muqaddimah in a cave near Ferenda in Tihirt, known now as Tiaret in western Algeria, at a height of more than 1,000 meters. It is said that Ibn Khaldun took refuge in the cave to have the calm and serenity necessary to write his famous multidisciplinary book. Later, several distinguished 16th and 17th century Ottoman scholars and statesmen took a keen interest in Ibn Khaldun's work, and a partial translation of the Muqaddimah into Turkish was made in the 18th century. But it was only after the 1860s, when a complete French translation of the Muqaddimah appeared, that Ibn Khaldun found the worldwide audience his incomparable genius deserved. Well, with this we come to the end of our program, Inspiring Figures. That's it for me. Thank you for joining us.
The Kasbah is a unique kind of Medina or Islamic city. It stands in one of the finest coastal sites on the Mediterranean, overlooking the islands, where a Carthaginian trading post was established in the 4th century before Christ. There are the remains of the citadel, old mosques and Ottoman-style palaces, as well as the remains of a traditional urban structure associated with a deep-rooted sense of community. The Kasbah of Algiers is an outstanding example of a historic Maghreb city having had extensive influence on town planning in the western part of the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa. Indeed, located on the Mediterranean coast, the site was inhabited at least from the 6th century BC, when a Phoenician trading post was established in there. The term Kasbah, that originally designated the highest point of the Medina during the Zirid area, today applies to the ensemble of the old town of El Jazair, within the boundaries marked by the ramparts, and built at the end of the 16th century, dating back to the Ottoman period. In this living environment where nearly 50,000 people reside, very interesting traditional houses, palaces, hammams, mosques, and various souks are still conserved, the urban form of which bears witness of an effect of stratification of several styles in a complex and original system that has adapted remarkably well to a very hilly and uneven side. The Kasbah of Algiers has exercised considerable influence on architecture and town planning in North Africa, Andalusia, and in sub-Saharan Africa during the 16th and 17th century. These exchanges are illustrated in the specific character of its houses and the density of its urban stratification, a model of human settlement where the ancestral lifestyle and Muslim customs have blended with other types of traditions. The Kasbah of Algiers is an outstanding example of a traditional human settlement representing a profoundly Mediterranean Muslim culture, synthesis of numerous traditions, the vestige of the citadel, ancient mosques, Ottoman palaces, as well as the traditional urban structure associated with a strong sense of community testify to this culture and are the result of its interaction with the various layers of populations. Despite the changes and the earthquake risks experienced by the site, the Kasbah of Algiers still retains its integrity. On the whole, the aesthetic character, material used, and the architectural elements retain their original aspect that expresses the values for which the site was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1992. The continuing residential function has strengthened the viability of the site as well as the integrity of its image. Restoration work of the built heritage of the Kasbah, undertaken in the framework of the Safeguarding and Valorization Plan, is in conformity with the local and national standards and contributes towards maintaining the integrity of the site. Nevertheless, there are threats to the integrity linked to densification and uncontrolled interventions. Other risks originate from earthquakes and fire, as well as landslides and floods. The attributes of the outstanding universal value for which the site was inscribed are maintained. The Kasbah bears witness to a remarkable authenticity as regards the form and conception with its very dense urban planning. Construction materials with earthen bricks, earthen and lime rendering, stone and wood, and also the use, whether residential for trading or cult and popular customs. The survival of traditional architectural skills, notably in the building trades and architectural decoration, is a major advantage in support of the outstanding universal value. The Kasbah of Algiers was listed as a National Historic Site in November 1991 and safeguarded sector in 2003. The state party considers, however, that it is necessary to revise the legal and administrative provisions relating to the property to improve its protection and enhancement. The management of the site is entrusted to the Cultural Directorate of the Wilaya or Province of Algiers. There is a continual need to conserve and rehabilitate the property to forestall deterioration of the urban fabric. Threats from the risks of earthquakes and the fire exist, whereas the landslides and floods always constitute a possible threat. A permanent plan for the safeguarding and the valorization of the safeguarded. The management plan will cover these issues and take account of a buffer zone and regular monitoring activities. To reinforce this action, a regulatory text is being adopted, that of the agencies for the safeguarded sectors. The Office for the Management of Cultural Properties and Exploitation is responsible in the name of the Ministry of Culture for the management of the listed archaeological and historic monuments and sites, including those located inside a safeguarded sector.